one reckless kiss in a crowded bar, one man who didn't flinch, one moment that shattered the boundary between ordinary life and a world built on power, secrets, and shadows. Lena Harper thought it was just a dare, a wild Friday night story she'd laugh about tomorrow. But Victor Moretti wasn't laughing. He was watching, calculating, already deciding what came next. What began as careless spontaneity became something far more dangerous, deliberate, controlled, and impossible to escape. Because some men don't chase, they choose. And once chosen, there's no going back. If you're ready to witness how one moment of recklessness became a lifetime of deliberate passion, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far Lena and Victor's story reaches across the world. The bass pounded through the velvet room like a second heartbeat, thick and relentless, vibrating through the soles of Lena Harper's boots and into her chest. Friday night in downtown Chicago meant the bar was packed shoulder to shoulder with bodies swaying, laughing, shouting over music that seemed determined to drown out coherent thought. Lena loved it, the chaos, the noise, the beautiful temporary amnesia that came with good friends, cold drinks, and zero responsibilities until Monday morning. She leaned against the bar, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders, her eyes bright with the particular kind of mischief that only emerged after 2 cocktails and the promise of a night with no consequences. Beside her, her best friend Maya was already 3 drinks deep, gesturing wildly as she recounted some disaster from her latest Tinder date. "I'm telling you, Lena, he showed up in Crocs. Crocs, to a nice restaurant. Who does that?" Lena laughed, the sound lost in the thunder of music. Maybe he was making a statement about authenticity. The only statement he made was that I needed to fake a family emergency. Maya grabbed Lena's arm, her eyes suddenly sparkling with a different kind of excitement. "Okay, but speaking of statements, don't look now, but the guy in the corner booth has been watching you for the last 10 minutes. Lena's instinct, naturally, was to look immediately. The corner booth was elevated slightly, separated from the main floor by a velvet rope, and 2 men who definitely weren't there for the atmosphere. They stood like sentries, hands clasped in front of them, eyes scanning the crowd with professional detachment. And behind them, in the shadows of the booth, sat 3 men in expensive suits that looked impossibly crisp, despite the heat and crush of bodies. But Lena only saw one. He sat in the center, his posture relaxed but somehow commanding, one arm stretched along the back of the booth, the other resting on the table where a glass of what looked like whiskey sat untouched. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored to perfection, and even from across the room, Lena could see the sharp line of his jaw, the dark hair swept back from his forehead, the way his eyes, impossibly dark, impossibly focused, were fixed directly on her. He wasn't smiling, wasn't leering, wasn't doing any of the things men in bars typically did when they looked at women. He was simply watching, like she was a problem he was solving, a puzzle piece he was deciding whether to pick up. "Oh my God, he's still looking," Maya hissed, delighted. "Lena, that is not a normal man. That is a I own this bar and possibly the building and maybe several city blocks kind of man." Lena felt heat creep up her neck, and she forced herself to look away, turning back to the bar with a casual shrug she absolutely didn't feel. "He's probably looking at someone behind me." "Babe, there is a literal wall behind you." "Then he's looking at the wall. Maybe he's really into brick." Maya snorted. "You're deflecting. Why are you deflecting? You love attention." "I love fun attention. That guy looks like he'd have me audited for fun. Or kissed against a wall until you forgot your own name." Lena's laugh caught in her throat because the image was suddenly, vividly there. Those dark eyes up close. The controlled intensity focused entirely on her, hands that looked like they knew exactly what they wanted and how to take it. She shook her head, draining the last of her martini. "You have been reading too many romance novels. And you have been planning other people's love stories for too long. When's the last time you had one of your own?" It was a fair point. Lena Harper made her living creating perfect moments for other people. Proposals on rooftops, anniversary parties in botanical gardens, corporate events that ran like Swiss watches. She orchestrated romance, celebration, and connection with meticulous precision. But her own love life? A series of pleasant, forgettable dates with pleasant, forgettable men who never quite sparked anything worth remembering. Safe, predictable, easy to walk away from. The man in the corner booth looked like the opposite of all those things. Earth to Lena. Maya waved a hand in front of her face. Where'd you go? Nowhere, just thinking. Well, stop thinking and start doing. I dare you. Lena's attention snapped back to her friend. Dare me to what? Maya's grin turned wicked, and Lena immediately recognized the look. It was the same expression Maya had worn before daring her to karaoke in college, before convincing her to cut her hair into bangs, a mistake, before every impulsive decision that had led to either fantastic stories or minor disasters. I dare you, Maya said slowly, savoring each word, to walk over there and kiss him. Lena's eyes widened. Absolutely not. Why not? You said yourself you need more spontaneity in your life. I said I needed to try new restaurants, not commit social suicide by assaulting strange men in VIP booths. It's not assault if you make it confident. And look at him, Lena. That is a man who does not get surprised. Don't you want to see what happens when someone catches him off guard? Lena glanced back toward the booth, and her stomach did a strange flip. He was still watching, not staring, nothing so crude, but aware, completely, utterly aware of her existence in a way that made her skin prickle with heat. The bouncers would throw me out before I got within 5 feet of him. $20 says they don't. Maya, $50. And I'll plan your next 3 birthday parties for free. Lena hesitated. The rational part of her brain, the part that showed up to meetings on time, that triple-checked vendor contracts, that never left anything to chance, was screaming that this was a terrible idea. But the other part, the part that had been buried under schedules and spreadsheets and safe choices, whispered something different. When was the last time you did something just because it was wild? When was the last time you felt your heart race like this? When was the last time you surprised yourself? Fine, Lena heard herself say, but you're buying drinks for a month when this goes horribly wrong. Maya squealed, actually squealed, and shoved her toward the booth. Go before you overthink it. Lena took a breath, squared her shoulders, and started walking. The crowd seemed to part for her, or maybe she was just moving with enough purpose that people instinctively stepped aside. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step feeling both too fast and not fast enough. The music pounded. Her pulse pounded louder. The 2 men flanking the booth noticed her approach immediately. One of them, built like a refrigerator in an expensive suit, stepped forward with one hand raised. Private booth, miss. You'll need to... I just need 1 second, Lena said, her voice steadier than she felt. She didn't look at the bouncer. She looked directly at the man in the center of the booth, and she smiled, bright, reckless, completely unplanned. I promise I won't take up much of his time. The man's expression didn't change. He simply raised one hand, a tiny gesture, barely more than a finger lifted from the table. But the bouncer stepped aside immediately, melting back into position like he'd never moved at all. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She climbed the 2 steps to the elevated booth, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on her, how quiet the immediate area had become despite the thundering music. The 2 other men in the booth were watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation, but she ignored them. She only saw him. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled but would be absolutely lethal when it did, and those eyes, dark as midnight, completely unreadable, fixed on her with an intensity that should have been intimidating but instead felt like being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Hi, Lena said, and was absurdly proud that her voice didn't shake. Hello. His voice was deep, measured, with the barest hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or just the kind of refined that came from expensive schools and international business. I'm going to do something reckless, Lena continued, and you can absolutely stop me if you want to. One dark eyebrow rose a fraction of an inch. Can I? I mean, you should probably want to. We don't know each other. This is wildly inappropriate. But my friend dared me, and I have a reputation for being spontaneous to maintain, so... She didn't let herself finish the sentence, didn't let herself think. She just leaned forward, braced one hand on the table, and kissed him. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. His lips were warm, firm, and completely still beneath hers. Lena's brain caught up with her body and started screaming, "Abort! Abort! This was a mistake. He's not responding. Oh God, you've just assaulted a stranger." And then his hand came up, fingers curling around the back of her neck, and he kissed her back. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't tentative, it was controlled and deliberate and absolutely devastating. He tasted like whiskey and something darker, something that made her knees actually weak, made her grip the edge of the table to stay steady. His thumb brushed against her jaw, a touch so light it should have been nothing but felt like a brand. And then, just as suddenly as it began, he pulled back. Not far. Just enough that she could breathe again, just enough that she could see the way his eyes had darkened, the way something almost like surprise flickered across his face before control slammed back into place. "Spontaneous," he murmured, and there was something in his voice, amusement, maybe, or satisfaction, or something far more dangerous. Lena's brain was offline, completely, utterly offline. She straightened, released the table, and managed what she hoped was a confident smile. I'm going to go now, before I do anything else wildly inappropriate." "Should you?" The question stopped her mid-turn. She looked back at him, and he was still watching her with that same unreadable intensity, but now there was something else there too. Interest. Real, undeniable interest. "I don't even know your name," Lena said. "Victor Moretti." He said it simply, like it should mean something, and judging by the way one of the other men in the booth shifted uncomfortably, maybe it did. "Lena Harper." She offered her hand, which felt absurd after kissing him, but he took it anyway, his grip firm and warm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lena Harper." He didn't let go of her hand immediately. Instead, he turned it over, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that felt far more intimate than it should have. "That was quite an introduction. I have a reputation for memorable first impressions." "I don't doubt it." He released her hand slowly, deliberately. "Will you be here long?" "I don't know. That depends on whether my friend has recovered from her shock yet. Then I hope she takes her time." Victor reached into his jacket and produced a business card, plain black with silver lettering. He held it out to her. "In case you'd like to continue this conversation somewhere quieter." Lena took the card, her fingers brushing his. Just a phone number. No company name, no title, nothing to indicate who or what Victor Moretti actually was. But somehow, that made it more intriguing. "I'll think about it," she said, which was a massive understatement. She'd be thinking about nothing else for the foreseeable future. "I hope you do more than think." And there it was. Not quite a smile, but close enough that Lena felt heat flood through her entire body. She managed a nod, another smile, and somehow made her legs carry her back down the steps, past the bouncers, through the crowd that was definitely staring now, back to where Maya stood at the bar, with her mouth literally hanging open. "What?" Maya shouted over the music. "Was that?" Lena collapsed against the bar, her heart still racing, her lips still tingling, her entire body still humming with adrenaline and something far more dangerous. "I have no idea. You just kissed the hottest man I have ever seen in my entire life." "I'm aware." "And he kissed you back." "Also aware." "And he gave you his number." "Yep." Maya grabbed her shoulders. "Lena, that was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. Who is he? What does he do? Is he single? Is he looking? Are you going to call him?" Lena looked down at the card in her hand, at the simple elegance of it, at the weight of possibility it represented. "I don't know who he is. I don't know what he does, and I have no idea if I'm going to call him. But you want to." "Maya, I kissed a complete stranger on a dare. That's not exactly the foundation for a healthy relationship." "Who said anything about healthy? I'm talking about hot. Intense. The kind of story you tell your grandchildren and then immediately regret because it's way too much information." Lena laughed, but it sounded breathless even to her own ears. She glanced back toward the booth, and her stomach dropped. Victor was still watching her, not pretending to look away, not feigning disinterest, just watching, with the patience of someone who knew exactly what he wanted and had no doubt he'd get it eventually. He's still looking at you, Maya whispered. I know. That is not a normal person, Lena. Normal people do not look like that. Normal people do not kiss like that, I'm assuming, based on the way you look, like you just got hit by a truck made of attraction. It was just a kiss. Babe, that was not just a kiss. That was a declaration of intent. Lena wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Maya was right. That kiss hadn't felt casual or playful or even particularly spontaneous despite how it started. It had felt like a decision. Like Victor Moretti had made up his mind about something in that single moment, and whatever he decided, Lena was somehow central to it. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it was thrilling. I need another drink, Lena said. You need to text him. I need another drink first, and then maybe I'll consider texting him in 3 to 5 business days like a normal person with healthy boundaries. Maya rolled her eyes but flagged down the bartender anyway. As Lena waited for her drink, she couldn't help but glance back one more time. The booth was empty now, Victor and his companions gone like they'd never been there at all. Only the lingering weight of his attention remained, heavy and warm and impossible to shake. Lena slipped the business card into her pocket and tried to convince herself she wouldn't use it. She failed completely. The hangover hit Lena like divine retribution Saturday morning. She woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window with all the subtlety of a spotlight, her head pounding in rhythm with her regrets. She groaned, rolled over, and immediately saw her phone on the nightstand, the screen dark but somehow accusatory. She'd texted him. Of course she'd texted him, because apparently 3 drinks was exactly the amount required to override every self-preservation instinct she possessed. Lena grabbed the phone and scrolled through her messages, wincing. Lena, 1:47 a.m. Hi, this is Lena, from the bar. The spontaneous kisser. Is this weird? This feels weird. Lena, 1:52 a.m. I promise I don't normally kiss strangers, or text them at 2 a.m. I'm usually very professional and put together. Lena, 1:53 a.m. That's a lie. I'm sometimes professional. I'm frequently put together. I occasionally kiss strangers when dared. Lena, to 1:55 a.m. I'm going to stop texting now before I say something else embarrassing. Victor, 2:03 a.m. Good morning, Lena. Nothing about this is weird. I was hoping you'd reach out. Victor, 2:04 a.m. I find honesty refreshing, and for what it's worth, you seemed very put together when you walked into that booth, confident, certain of what you wanted. Victor, 2:06 a.m. Were you? Certain? Lena, 2:07 a.m. I was certain I wanted to win a bet with my friend. Everything after that was improvisation. Victor, 2:08 a.m. I enjoyed your improvisation. Would you like to have dinner with me? Lena, 2:11 a.m. Like an actual date? Victor, 2:11 a.m. Yes, an actual date, tomorrow evening. I'll send a car at 7. Lena, 2:13 a.m. You'll send a car. That's very formal. Victor, 2:14 a.m. I'm a formal person, Lena, but I promise the evening will be worth the formality. Lena, 2:18 a.m. Okay, yes, 7 works. Victor, 2:19 a.m. Good, sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow. Lena stared at the phone, her hungover brain struggling to process what sober Lena had apparently agreed to. A date. With a man who sent cars, who kissed like he was claiming territory, who looked at her like she was simultaneously the most interesting and most dangerous thing he'd encountered in years. What have I done? She muttered to the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Maya. Maya, did you text him? Lena. Yes. Maya. And? Lena. I have a date tomorrow night. Maya. Lena Harper. You absolute legend. Lena. I think I'm going to throw up. Maya. From the hangover or the nerves? Lena. Both. Definitely both. Maya. Wear the black dress, the one with the back. Trust me. Lena dropped the phone and buried her face in her pillow. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to figure out what she'd gotten herself into, to prepare for dinner with a man she knew absolutely nothing about, except that he had the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet, and the kind of kiss that made her forget her own name. 24 hours to decide if she was brave enough to see where this led, or smart enough to run while she still could. Sunday evening arrived with the inexorable certainty of a deadline. Lena had changed outfits 4 times, done and redone her makeup twice, and was currently standing in front of her bathroom mirror giving herself what was probably the world's least convincing pep talk. It's just dinner. People have dinner all the time. You have dinner literally every day. This is fine. You're fine. Everything is fine. Everything was not fine. Lena had spent the entire day oscillating between excitement and terror, occasionally stopping to Google Victor Moretti Chicago and coming up with absolutely nothing useful. A few business registrations, a mention in a society column from 3 years ago. Nothing that explained who he was or what he did or why he moved through the world like someone accustomed to having doors opened for him, literally and metaphorically. The black dress Maya had suggested looked perfect, she had to admit. It was elegant without being too formal, sophisticated without being stuffy, and the open back added just enough edge to remind herself she was the kind of woman who kissed strangers on dares, the kind of woman who said yes to mysterious dinner invitations, the kind of woman who was, apparently, about to have a minor panic attack in her bathroom. Her phone chimed, a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Good evening, Ms. Harper. This is James, Mr. Moretti's driver. I'm downstairs whenever you're ready. Lena's stomach flipped. This was happening. This was actually happening. She grabbed her clutch, checked her reflection one final time, and headed downstairs before she could talk herself out of it. The car was exactly what she'd expected, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her annual salary, parked in front of her building like it belonged there. A man in a crisp suit and driver's cap stood beside the rear door, and he smiled politely as she approached. Ms. Harper? That's me. James. A pleasure. He opened the door with practiced efficiency. Mr. Moretti asked me to ensure you were comfortable. There's water in the console and we should arrive in approximately 20 minutes. Thank you. Lena slid into the back seat, and the door closed with the kind of solid, expensive sound that made it clear this was not a normal car service. The interior smelled like leather and something subtle and expensive. Classical music played softly through invisible speakers, and on the seat beside her was a single white rose with a note card. Lena picked up the card, her fingers trembling slightly. Looking forward to continuing our conversation. V. Simple. Elegant. Somehow both impersonal and intimate at once. Lena held the rose carefully, its petals perfect and velvety soft, and watched the city slide past the tinted windows as James navigated through traffic with the kind of skill that suggested he did this often. Where did Victor Moretti live that he needed a driver? What kind of life required that level of formality? And why was she suddenly far more nervous than she'd been when she'd kissed him 2 nights ago? The car turned onto a tree-lined street in Lincoln Park, one of those impossibly elegant neighborhoods where brownstones cost millions and the sidewalks looked like they were pressure-washed daily. They pulled up in front of a building that somehow managed to be both understated and obviously exclusive, all clean lines and expensive materials and doormen who looked like they could double as private security. James opened her door. Mr. Moretti is expecting you in the penthouse. Thomas here will take you up. Another suited man appeared as if summoned, offering a polite nod. Ms. Harper, right this way. Lena followed him through a lobby that was more art gallery than apartment building, into an elevator with mirrored walls and brass fixtures. Thomas pressed a button marked PH and stepped back, hands clasped professionally. Have you worked with Mr. Moretti long? Lena asked, because the silence felt too heavy. 5 years, ma'am. He seems like he'd be a demanding boss. Thomas's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Mr. Moretti has high standards, but he's fair. Loyal to those who are loyal to him. It wasn't quite an answer, but the elevator dinged before Lena could press further. The doors opened directly into an apartment. No hallway, no other doors, just straight into a space that made Lena's modest 2-bedroom feel like a shoebox. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the far wall, offering a view of Chicago's skyline that belonged in architectural magazines. The furnishings were minimal but clearly expensive, all clean lines and rich materials, modern without being cold. Art decorated the walls, pieces that looked like they belonged in museums. And in the center of it all, standing near the windows with a glass of wine in his hand, was Victor. He'd traded the suit for something slightly less formal: dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie. It should have made him look more relaxed. Instead, it just highlighted the lean strength of his frame, the controlled power in the way he moved as he turned to face her. Lena. Her name and his voice sounded different, intentional. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the rose and the very intimidating car service. His mouth curved slightly. I wanted to make sure you felt taken care of. Mission accomplished. I felt approximately 70% convinced I was being kidnapped by a very polite criminal organization. This time he actually smiled, and Lena's breath caught because Maya had been right. That smile was absolutely lethal. I promise my intentions are entirely above board. That's exactly what someone with below-board intentions would say. Then I suppose you'll have to decide whether to trust me. He crossed the room, moving with that same predatory grace she remembered from the bar, and offered his hand. Come, dinner's ready. Lena took his hand, letting him lead her through the apartment to a dining area where a table had been set for two. Candles flickered in simple glass holders. Wine was already poured, and through the windows the city glittered like a constellation laid out just for them. You didn't cook all this yourself, did you? Lena asked as Victor pulled out her chair. I have many skills, but cooking isn't among them. My chef prepared everything this afternoon. You have a chef? I have several people who help maintain my life so I can focus on work. And what work is that exactly? Lena watched him settle into the chair across from her, his movements economical and precise. I tried Googling you. You're surprisingly hard to find. I value privacy. That's not an answer. No, Victor agreed, lifting his wine glass. It's not, but it's truthful. Lena studied him across the candlelight, this man who'd somehow gone from stranger to mystery to dinner companion in the span of 48 hours. He looked completely at ease, like having beautiful women in his apartment was routine, but there was something in the way he watched her, that same focused intensity from the bar, that suggested this wasn't routine at all. So we're doing the mysterious billionaire thing? Lena asked lightly. I'm not a billionaire. That's reassuring. I draw the line at billionaires. Multimillionaires are fine, but billionaires are statistically more likely to be supervillains. Victor's eyes glinted with amusement. I'll keep that in mind. And for the record, I work in acquisitions and consulting. I help companies transition during difficult periods. That sounds very corporate and very vague. It's both. He set down his glass. But I didn't invite you here to talk about work. I want to know about you, Lena Harper. What drives someone to kiss strangers on dares? Lena took a sip of wine to buy herself time. It was excellent, of course, rich and complex, and probably cost more than her phone bill. Honestly, boredom, curiosity, a slight tendency towards self-sabotage that I'm working on in therapy. I don't think kissing me was self-sabotage. No, what would you call it? Instinct. You saw something you wanted and you took it. That requires courage. Or alcohol. Let's be honest, the martinis played a role. The martinis gave you permission, but the want was already there. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze direct and unflinching. Wasn't it? Lena felt heat crawl up her neck. Because he was right. The dare had been an excuse, but the desire had been real, sudden and sharp and completely undeniable the moment she'd locked eyes with him across that crowded bar. Maybe, she admitted. I appreciate the honesty. Victor sat back, seemingly satisfied with her answer. Tell me about your work. Maya mentioned you're an event planner. Maya talks too much. She cares about you, and she was very insistent that I understand you're not the kind of woman who normally does things like this. She's right. I'm usually the responsible one, the one who makes sure everyone else has a good time while I maintain the schedule and manage the vendors and make sure nothing catches fire, literally or metaphorically. But Friday night you decided to be irresponsible. I decided to be spontaneous. There's a difference. Is there? Victor's smile was knowing. Both require letting go of control. I let go of control all the time, in controlled environments, with safety nets. And kissing me was without a safety net. Completely free-falling into terrible decisions, yes. I'm a terrible decision? Lena met his eyes, saw the challenge there, and felt something reckless rise in her chest. I don't know yet. Ask me again at the end of the night. Victor's expression shifted, something dark and satisfied and entirely too confident. I intend to. A door opened somewhere in the apartment, and a woman in chef's whites appeared with their first course, breaking the tension that had wound tight between them. Victor thanked her quietly, and she disappeared as silently as she'd arrived. Your staff is very discreet, Lena observed. I value privacy, Victor repeated, and I pay well for discretion. That sounds ominous. It's practical. I have business interests that require confidentiality. And now I'm imagining you're a mob boss. Victor went very still, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. For a moment, Lena worried she'd crossed a line with the joke. But then he set down the fork carefully, dabbed his mouth with his napkin, and looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Would it matter? He asked quietly. If I was. Lena's heart stuttered, because the way he said it, calm, direct, with no humor at all, made it clear this wasn't entirely hypothetical. I don't know, she said honestly. I think it would depend on what kind of mob boss we're talking about. Like Godfather mob boss or random street thug mob boss? Because there's a spectrum. You're joking. I'm a little bit serious and a lot bit terrified by this conversation. Victor studied her for a long moment, then shook his head slightly. I'm not a mob boss, Lena, but I am someone who operates in spaces most people never see. I make decisions that affect lives and livelihoods. I have power that makes people nervous, and I use that power very deliberately. To do what? To maintain order, to protect what's mine, to ensure that when I make a commitment, it's honored. That still sounds kind of ominous. Perhaps. He picked up his fork again. But I'm telling you this now because I don't want there to be confusion later. I'm not a simple man, Lena. My life is complicated in ways that would take hours to explain and might not make sense even then. But I'm also not a villain. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't deal in drugs or trafficking or any of the things I suspect you're imagining. What do you deal in? Influence, information, control. He said it simply, like he was describing the weather. And before you ask, yes, some of it exists in gray areas. Yes, I've made enemies. Yes, there are reasons I have security and drivers and staff who know how to disappear when needed. Lena set down her own fork, her appetite suddenly complicated by the weight of what he was telling her. Why are you being so honest? We just met. You could have fed me some corporate line and I'd have believed it. Because I saw the way you looked at me in that bar, and I want you to keep looking at me that way. But I want it to be real. Based on truth, not fantasy. Victor leaned forward, his voice dropping. I'm attracted to you, Lena. More than I've been attracted to anyone in a very long time. But I won't pull you into my world without you understanding what that world looks like. And if I decide it's too much, then I drive you home tonight, and we part as two people who shared one extraordinary kiss and one honest conversation. And if I don't, then we see where this goes, carefully, with clear boundaries and honest communication, because despite what happened Friday, I'm not impulsive, I'm deliberate, and if we do this, I want to do it right. Lena sat back, her mind racing. Every rational instinct screamed that she should leave, that this was too complicated, too dangerous, too far outside her comfortable, controlled life. But another part of her, the part that had walked into that booth 2 nights ago, was curious, thrilled even, by the honesty, by the fact that Victor wasn't pretending to be something he wasn't. One question, Lena said finally. Anything. Have you ever killed anyone? Victor didn't flinch. No. I've ordered people hurt when they threaten me or mine. I've ruined careers and businesses when necessary, but I don't kill. That's a line I won't cross. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Lena felt something settle in her chest. Not quite trust, but the foundation of it. Because he could have lied. Could have given her a sanitized version of himself. But he'd chosen truth. Okay, Lena said softly. Okay? I want to see where this goes, carefully, with boundaries. Victor's entire demeanor shifted, relief and satisfaction and something fiercer all crossing his face at once. You're sure? No, but I'm sure I want to find out. He reached across the table, his hand extending palm up in invitation. Lena placed her hand in his, and his fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, deliberate. Then let's start simple, Victor said. Finish dinner with me. Tell me about your favorite events you've planned. Let me learn what makes you smile. And then? Then I take you home. We exchange numbers properly. And tomorrow, if you're willing, we have coffee, something normal and public and completely ordinary. You want to date me, like actually date me. Yes, with all the traditional steps, dinners, conversations, learning each other's quirks and boundaries. I told you, Lena, I'm not impulsive. When I want something, I pursue it properly. Lena felt a smile tug at her lips despite the lingering uncertainty in her chest. Most men don't tell women they have business interests in gray areas on the first date. Most men aren't honest about who they are. I'd rather you know now than discover it later and feel betrayed. That's actually kind of sweet, in a terrifying, morally ambiguous way. Victor's smile was small but genuine. I'll take it. Now eat. The chef will be offended if you don't try everything. And somehow, impossibly, Lena did. They ate and talked, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had that first night, minus the alcohol and added honesty. Victor asked about her work, her friends, her favorite places in Chicago. She asked about his childhood in Italy, his move to America, the businesses he'd built. Not everything. She could feel the careful editing, the details he left out, but enough to paint a picture of a man who'd fought for everything he had and protected it fiercely. By the time dessert arrived, something involving chocolate and raspberry that made Lena actually moan aloud, she'd almost forgotten to be nervous. That sound, Victor murmured, watching her with dark eyes, is incredibly distracting. Lena flushed. Sorry, I get enthusiastic about good food. Don't apologize. I like knowing what brings you pleasure. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Lena set down her fork, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how his eyes hadn't left her face, how the air felt charged with all the things they weren't saying. Victor, I should take you home, he said, but he didn't move. Before I forget, I promise to take this slowly. Would that be so terrible? Forgetting? His jaw tightened. Yes, because you deserve better than rushed. You deserve to be certain. I'm certain I want you to kiss me again. Victor closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were molten. Lena, just once. Then I'll go home and you can pursue me properly with coffee dates and traditional courting or whatever this is. This is me trying to be a better man than I usually am. I don't want a better man. I want the man who kissed me in that bar like he was claiming something that already belonged to him. Victor stood abruptly, and Lena thought she'd pushed too hard, gone too far. But then he was pulling her to her feet, one hand cupping her face, tilting her chin up, and his mouth was on hers. The first kiss had been shocking. This one was devastating. Victor kissed her like he'd been starving for it, like the restraint he'd shown all evening was finally cracking. His other hand slid around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and Lena gasped against his mouth. He took immediate advantage, deepening the kiss, tasting her thoroughly, completely. Her hands found his shoulders, his hair, anywhere she could reach, trying to anchor herself against the tidal wave of want that crashed through her. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, and Lena's knees were genuinely weak. I need to take you home, Victor said roughly. Right now, before I do something we're not ready for. What if I'm ready? You're not, and neither am I. He pressed his forehead against hers, his hand still gentle despite the tension thrumming through his frame. I want to do this right, Lena. I want you to know me, trust me, choose me with full understanding of what that means. You're really serious about the proper courting thing. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the truth of it in the way he held her, careful and possessive all at once. Okay, take me home. But Victor? Yes? I'm choosing you already. The rest is just details. His arms tightened around her briefly before he stepped back, his expression raw and honest and completely unguarded for just a moment. Then I'll make sure I'm worthy of that choice. He called for James, helped Lena into her coat, and walked her down to the car like this was a normal date and not the most intense evening of her entire life. At her building, he walked her to her door, kissed her once more, softer this time, sweeter, and then stepped back with clear reluctance. "Coffee tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes." "I'll text you. Sleep well, Lena." "You too." She watched him walk away, watched the car pull smoothly into traffic, and then let herself into her apartment where she immediately collapsed against the door and called Maya. "Tell me everything." And Lena did. Coffee became their ritual. Not the rushed, grab-and-go kind that fueled most of Chicago's workforce, but deliberate morning meetings at a quiet cafe in River North, where the owner knew Victor by name and always kept his usual table available. Lena learned that Victor took his espresso black, that he read 3 newspapers every morning, and that despite his controlled exterior, he had opinions about everything from city politics to the best pizza in Chicago, opinions he defended with the kind of passion most people reserved for sports teams. "Deep dish is not pizza," Victor said one Thursday morning, his expression serious. "It's a casserole pretending to be pizza." Lena nearly choked on her latte. "You did not just insult deep dish in Chicago. That's basically treason. I'm Italian. I have standards. You've lived here for 15 years, which is how I know I'm right." But his eyes were warm with amusement, and Lena realized this was what she loved most about their mornings together, the way Victor relaxed around her, let his guard down in increments, revealed pieces of himself he clearly didn't show the rest of the world. 3 weeks of coffee dates had become 3 weeks of dinners, walks along the lakefront, late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight. Victor courted her with old-fashioned intentionality that felt both foreign and thrilling. He opened doors, pulled out chairs, walked on the street side of sidewalks. But he also listened when she talked about work frustrations, asked thoughtful questions about her family, remembered small details she'd mentioned in passing, and he kissed her goodnight at her door with a restraint that was slowly driving them both insane. "You know," Lena said one evening as they stood in her building's lobby, Victor's hands framing her face as he kissed her with maddening thoroughness, "most people would have moved past the goodnight kiss phase by now. Most people aren't me." Victor's thumb traced her lower lip, his eyes dark. "And I want you too much to rush this." "That logic makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense. When I take you to bed, Lena, I want you completely certain. No doubts, no reservations, no morning after regrets." "I'm certain now." "You think you are." He kissed her forehead, stepping back before she could argue. "Give it time." Time was what she had plenty of, apparently. Time to learn that Victor's control extended to every aspect of his life. His schedule mapped out in precise blocks, his apartment maintained with military precision, his business dealings conducted with chess master strategy. But she also learned where the cracks were. The way his jaw tightened when someone called during dinner, the careful editing when she asked about his work, the 2 bodyguards who followed at a discreet distance whenever they went anywhere public. "Why do you need security?" Lena asked one Saturday as they walked through Millennium Park, the beans mirrored surface reflecting the autumn sky. 20 feet behind them, 2 men in dark suits maintained their vigil. "Because I've made enemies," Victor answered simply. "People who would use anything I care about against me." "Including me?" He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Especially you now." The words should have been frightening. Instead, they felt like confirmation of something she'd suspected for weeks, that whatever was happening between them wasn't casual for Victor either, that he was as invested, as affected, as uncertain of the outcome as she was. "Does that bother you?" he asked quietly. "The security?" "No. The fact that you think someone might hurt me to hurt you, that's more complicated. I can protect you. I know you can. But Victor, I don't want to need protection. I don't want to be something you have to guard." His expression softened. "You're not something I guard. You're someone I choose to protect. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. One is obligation. The other is—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Privilege." Lena's heart stuttered. They hadn't said the words yet, hadn't defined what this was beyond dating, but standing there in the middle of the park with the city humming around them and Victor looking at her like she was simultaneously the best and most terrifying thing that had ever happened to him, Lena felt the truth settle in her chest. She was falling in love with him, maybe had already fallen. And judging by the way Victor's expression shifted, raw and vulnerable and almost awed, he knew it too. Lena. Her phone buzzed, then again, and again. She pulled it out, frowning at the screen. 12 missed calls from Maya, 6 texts, each more panicked than the last. I need to call her back, Lena said apologetically. She never calls like this unless it's an emergency. Victor nodded, his hand settling warm and reassuring on the small of her back as Lena dialed. Maya answered on the first ring. Oh, thank God. Lena, I need you right now. Can you come to my apartment? What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine, but... Maya's voice broke. It's Derek. He showed up drunk. He's outside my building and he won't leave, and I'm scared to go down there alone, but I need him to leave before my landlord calls the cops. Derek. Maya's ex-boyfriend who'd spent 6 months making her life miserable before she'd finally gotten a restraining order. Lena felt rage spike through her anxiety. I'm coming. Don't go down there. Stay inside and keep your door locked. Okay. I'm sorry. I know you were with Victor. Don't apologize. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Lena ended the call and looked up at Victor. I'm sorry. My best friend is in trouble. Her ex is harassing her and I need to go make sure she's safe. I'll take you. You don't have to. Lena. Victor's voice was firm. I'm taking you. Where does she live? 15 minutes later, Victor's car pulled up outside Maya's building in Wicker Park. Lena could see the problem immediately. A man in wrinkled clothes swaying in front of the entrance, shouting up at the windows. A small crowd had gathered across the street, watching with the detached interest of people glad the drama wasn't theirs. Stay in the car, Victor said quietly. Absolutely not. She's my friend. And he's drunk and unstable. Let me handle it. Victor? He was already out of the car. Lena scrambled after him, her heels clicking on the pavement as she rushed to keep up. Victor's security materialized from somewhere, flanking him as he approached Derek with the kind of calm that somehow made him more intimidating than if he'd been aggressive. You need to leave, Victor said, his voice carrying despite its quietness. Derek spun around, nearly losing his balance. Who the hell are you? Someone telling you to leave now. This is none of your business, man. I'm talking to my girlfriend. She's not your girlfriend. She has a restraining order against you, which means you're breaking the law by being here. Derek's eyes narrowed with drunken belligerence. I just want to talk to her, that's all. Just talk. No. Victor moved forward, and something in his posture changed, became predatory, dangerous. You're going to walk away, get in whatever car brought you here and drive home, or my associates will ensure you leave in a much less comfortable fashion. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Lena had never seen Victor like this. Cold, absolutely unyielding, radiating the kind of controlled violence that made every survival instinct scream danger. Derek must have sensed it too, because he took a stumbling step backward. Maya, Derek shouted up at the windows. Baby, please, I'm sorry, just give me another chance. Victor nodded once, and his security moved. Not roughly, Lena had to give them credit for that, but with absolute efficiency. One of them took Derek's arm, guiding him firmly toward a beat-up sedan parked down the block. Derek protested, but half-heartedly, the fight draining out of him as quickly as it had sparked. If you come back, Victor called after him, I'll make sure the police know. And I have very good relationships with the police, Derek. They listen when I call. It wasn't until Derek's car pulled away that Lena realized she'd been holding her breath. Victor turned to her, his expression softening immediately as he took in her face. Are you all right? I should be asking you that. Victor, you can't threaten people like that. I can when they're terrorizing women who have legal protection orders against them. His hand found hers, warm despite the autumn chill. Is Maya safe to come down now? Lena texted her, and Maya appeared minutes later, mascara smudged and shaking. She took one look at Victor and burst into tears. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. He's been calling for weeks and I thought I could ignore it, but then he showed up and I didn't know what to do. You did exactly right, Victor said gently. You called Lena, you stayed safe, and now he knows there are consequences if he comes back. I should have called the police. The police would have arrested him, given him another violation on his record, made him angrier. Victor's expression was grim. Now he knows that people who care about you have resources, power. That's often more effective than legal consequences. Maya wiped her eyes. You're kind of scary when you want to be. I get that a lot. Victor glanced at Lena. Take her inside, make sure she's settled. I'll wait here. Lena wanted to argue, but Maya needed her more than her pride needed to make a point. She guided her friend upstairs, made tea, listened to the whole story of Derek's escalating harassment, and promised to help Maya document everything for a more comprehensive restraining order. Your boyfriend is intense, Maya said finally, curled up on her couch with a blanket. But in like a really hot protective way? He's not my boyfriend. Lena, he just terrified my ex into leaving with approximately 3 sentences. That man is definitely your boyfriend. We haven't labeled it. You don't need to label it. I can see it on your face. You're in love with him. Lena opened her mouth to deny it, but couldn't. Yeah, I think I am. Does he know? I think so. We almost said it today, before you called. Maya's expression crumpled. I'm so sorry I interrupted. Don't apologize. You needed help, and I'm glad I was there. Lena squeezed her hand. Are you okay now? Do you want me to stay? No, go back to your scary, protective, definitely boyfriend. And Lena, thank you for having a scary boyfriend who shows up when I need him. Lena kissed her forehead and headed back downstairs. Victor was exactly where she'd left him, leaning against his car, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as she approached, and something in his expression made her throat tight. Is she all right? She will be, thanks to you. Lena stepped closer, into his space, and wrapped her arms around his waist. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. His arms came around her automatically, holding her close. She's important to you. That makes her important to me. You scared him. Good. He should be scared. Men who intimidate women deserve to know how it feels. Lena pulled back enough to look up at him. This is what you meant, isn't it? About operating in gray areas, about having power most people don't see. Victor's jaw tightened. Yes. You could have had him arrested. Instead, you chose intimidation. Because arrests create paperwork, records, attention. Derek needed to understand he'd made a mistake, and he needed to understand it immediately. Sometimes the threat of violence is more effective than violence itself. That's terrifying. I know. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Is it too much? Do you want me to take you home and walk away? Lena considered it, truly considered it, because this was the moment, the clear, undeniable glimpse into who Victor Moretti really was. Not the charming man who brought her coffee and debated pizza toppings, but the one who commanded loyalty, who made problems disappear, who operated by rules most people never even knew existed. No, she said finally. I want you to take me to your place, and I want you to stop treating me like I'm going to break. Victor's eyes darkened. Lena, I'm not uncertain anymore, Victor. I know what I'm choosing. I know who you are, and I'm choosing you anyway, so unless you're going to tell me you don't want me. He kissed her, hard and deep, and with none of the restraint he'd shown for weeks. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head exactly how he wanted, and Lena gasped against his mouth. I want you, he growled against her lips. I've wanted you since you walked into that booth like you owned the world. I've been trying to be patient, to do this right. You have done it right. Now do it real. Victor pulled back, his breathing ragged, and looked at her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face seemed to satisfy him, because he nodded once and opened the car door. Get in. The drive to his apartment felt endless and far too short all at once. Victor's hand stayed on her thigh the entire time. His fingers warmed through the fabric of her jeans, possession and promise all at once. Neither of them spoke. Words felt unnecessary when the air between them was already vibrating with intention. The elevator ride to his penthouse was torture. The moment the doors closed, Victor pulled her against him, kissing her like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Lena's hands found his chest, his shoulders, the soft hair at his nape. And when the elevator dinged their arrival, they broke apart, breathing hard. Victor led her inside without turning on lights, the city's glow through the windows providing enough illumination to navigate by. But instead of heading toward what Lena assumed was his bedroom, he stopped in the living room, turning to face her with an expression that was both fierce and vulnerable. "Before we do this," he said quietly, "I need you to understand something. Victor, please, let me say this." He took her hands, his grip firm. "I told you I'm not impulsive, that I'm deliberate about what I want, and I want you, Lena. Not just tonight, not just until the novelty wears off. I want you in my life, in my space, in my future." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "That sounds an awful lot like a relationship declaration." "It is. I'm not interested in casual. I never have been. And I need to know if you're ready for that. For me. For what being with me actually means." "What does it mean?" "It means security following us sometimes. It means business dinners with people you might not like. It means late nights when I can't explain where I've been. It means trusting me even when I can't give you all the details." His voice roughened. "It means being mine, Lena. Completely. Because I don't do things halfway. And what do I get in return? Everything I have, my loyalty, my protection, my honesty, as much as I'm able to give it, and my love, when you're ready to hear it." The word hung between them like a struck bell, resonating in Lena's chest. "When I'm ready to hear it, I already love you." Victor said it simply, like he was stating a fact rather than making a declaration. "I've known for 2 weeks, but I didn't want to say it until I was sure you could handle everything that comes with it." Lena felt tears sting her eyes. "You're in love with me. Completely. Probably since you kissed me on a dare and looked at me like I was both the most interesting and most inconvenient thing that had ever happened to you. You're definitely the most inconvenient thing that's ever happened to me. I know. You're also," her voice caught, "you're the best thing too, and I love you back, even though you're bossy and controlling and way too good at intimidating drunk exes." Victor's smile was brilliant and boyish and absolutely devastating. "You love me." "I really do, which is probably a sign of poor judgment on my part." "Terrible judgment." He pulled her closer, his forehead touching hers. "Are you certain? Because once I have you, Lena, I won't want to let go." "Then don't." She kissed him softly, thoroughly. "I'm certain. I'm yours. Now stop asking permission and take me to bed." She didn't have to ask twice. Victor swept her into his arms, literally lifted her off her feet, and carried her through the apartment to a bedroom that was all clean lines and expensive sheets and windows that framed the city like a painting. He set her down beside the bed, and his hands found the hem of her sweater. "Tell me if I go too fast," he murmured against her neck. "Tell me if I go too slow." His laugh was rough and warm. "Not possible." Clothes disappeared in a tangle of hands and mouths and whispered names. Victor's control didn't crack, not exactly, but it transformed into something focused and devastating. He touched her like he was learning her, committing every gasp and shiver to memory. And when he finally moved over her, into her, Lena understood what he'd meant about being deliberate. This wasn't frantic or rushed. It was thorough, possessive, a claiming that went both ways. "Look at me," Victor commanded. And Lena opened eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed. His gaze was molten, intense, completely focused on her. "I want to see you. All of you." It should have been too much, too intimate, but instead it felt like being seen in a way she never had been before. Not just her body, but her, the sum of everything she was and wanted and feared. And when pleasure crashed through her, Victor's name on her lips, she saw the same devastation reflected in his eyes. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweaty and breathless and smiling like idiots. Victor's hand traced lazy patterns on her hip, and Lena pressed her face into his shoulder, feeling something settle in her chest that felt an awful lot like certainty. "So," she murmured, "I'm yours now?" "Completely." He kissed her temple. "How does that feel?" "Terrifying. Perfect. Like I just made either the best or worst decision of my life." I vote for best. You're biased. Extremely. Victor rolled to face her, his expression serious despite the warmth in his eyes. I meant what I said, Lena, about wanting you in my future, about this being real. I know, I meant it too. She traced the line of his jaw, feeling the scratch of stubble under her fingers. But Victor, you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll be honest with me, even when it's hard, even when you think it might scare me away, because I can handle a lot, but I can't handle being lied to. His expression flickered, something complicated passing through his eyes before he nodded. I promise. No lies, even when the truth is complicated. That's all I ask. He pulled her closer, and they stayed like that for a long time, watching the city lights through the windows, learning the rhythm of each other's breathing. Lena felt herself drifting toward sleep when Victor's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He tensed immediately. I need to check that. It's okay. Victor grabbed the phone, his expression shuddering as he read whatever was on the screen. I'm sorry. I have to make a call. Now? It's urgent. He kissed her quickly. Stay here. I'll be right back. He disappeared into what looked like an office, closing the door behind him. Lena lay in his bed, wrapped in his sheets, and tried not to feel the sudden distance like a physical thing. This was what he'd meant. Late nights. Unexplained absences. Business she couldn't be part of. She'd said she could handle it. Now she had to prove it. 20 minutes later, Victor returned, his expression grim. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand finding hers automatically. I have to go out. Okay. James will take you home. Or you can stay here. Whatever you're comfortable with. What happened? Victor hesitated, and Lena could see him weighing what to say. Finally, he sighed. Someone I do business with is having a problem. They need help resolving it before it becomes worse. Is it dangerous? No, just delicate. I'll be back in a few hours. Victor, I know what you're thinking, and you're right to think it. But I can't explain more than this, Lena. Not yet. I need you to trust that I'm not doing anything that will hurt innocent people. Lena studied his face, saw the tension there, the conflict, and made a choice. Okay, I trust you. You're not angry? I'm not thrilled, but you warned me this would happen. She squeezed his hand. Go. Do what you need to do. I'll stay here, if that's okay. Relief flooded his features. Thank you. He kissed her deeply, thoroughly. I'll be back as soon as I can. There's food in the kitchen, anything you want to watch on the TV. Make yourself at home. I will. He dressed quickly, efficiently, transforming from the man who'd just made love to her into someone harder, more remote. At the door, he paused. Lena? Yeah? I love you. I love you too. Be safe. He nodded and was gone, leaving Lena alone in his enormous apartment with the city spread out below her and far too many questions she didn't have answers to. She got up, pulled on one of Victor's shirts, and wandered through the space she'd only seen briefly before. The living room. The kitchen with its professional-grade appliances. The office where he'd made his call. She didn't go in, respecting his privacy even though her curiosity burned. On a bookshelf, she found photos. Victor with older people who had to be his parents. Victor in a suit shaking hands with men who looked important. Victor younger, leaner, harder around the edges, standing in front of a building with a "sold" sign. She was studying that last photo when her phone rang. Maya. Please tell me you're with your scary boyfriend and everything is amazing. Lena laughed despite herself. Define amazing. Oh my God, you slept with him. Maybe. Lena. Was it good? It was good, wasn't it? That man looks like he'd be really, really good. It was... Lena paused, searching for words. It was intense, perfect. He told me he loves me. Maya screamed, literally screamed so loud that Lena had to pull the phone away from her ear. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. You told him you love him back, right? Of course I did. So you're like official boyfriend-girlfriend, committed relationship status? I think we skipped straight past that into something more serious. Good. You deserve serious. You deserve someone who looks at you like you're the only thing in the room. Maya paused. Where's he now? He got a work call, had to leave for a few hours. And you're okay with that? Lena looked around the apartment, at the space Victor had invited her into, at the photos that showed pieces of his life, at the bed still rumpled from their bodies. Yeah, I think I am. He was honest about what this would be like, and I chose it anyway. You really love him. I really do. Then I'm happy for you, babe, even if he is slightly terrifying. They talked for another hour, until Lena's eyes started to get heavy, and Maya insisted she get some sleep. Lena crawled back into Victor's bed, into sheets that smelled like him and like them together, and let herself drift off despite the uncertainty curling in her chest. She woke to Victor sliding into bed beside her, his skin cold from the outside air, his arms immediately pulling her close. Everything okay? She mumbled. It's handled. He kissed her shoulder. Go back to sleep. Did you hurt anyone? No. Just convince some people that cooperation was in their best interest. You're really good at that. It's a valuable skill. His hand splayed across her stomach, warm and possessive. Thank you for staying. Thank you for coming back. I'll always come back to you, Lena. That's a promise. She believed him. Believed it bone deep despite barely knowing him, despite the complications, despite every rational reason she should be more cautious. Victor Moretti was dangerous and powerful and operated in worlds she didn't understand, but he was also hers, and she was his. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. The next 3 months unfolded like a masterclass in contradictions. Lena learned to navigate Victor's world with its unspoken rules and careful boundaries, while Victor slowly let her past defenses he'd spent years constructing. They fell into rhythms that felt both dangerously domestic and thrillingly unpredictable. Mornings at their coffee shop, evenings at his penthouse or her apartment, weekends exploring the city or staying in bed until noon. But underneath the romance, Lena felt something building, a tension she couldn't quite name. It started small. A phone call Victor took in another room, his voice too low to hear, but his posture rigid with stress. A dinner canceled last minute because something urgent came up. The way his security detail doubled after a news report about a warehouse fire on the south side that Victor watched with an expression she'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost cruel. Did you know those people? Lena asked, watching him watch the screen. Peripherally. Victor turned off the television. It's nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. No, it's protection. There are parts of my life that don't touch you, Lena. I'd like to keep it that way. She wanted to push, but something in his tone made her pull back. This was the line he'd warned her about, the place where his world and hers couldn't overlap. She had agreed to respect it, but respect didn't make the curiosity easier to live with. The real trouble started on a Friday in late November. Lena was planning a corporate holiday party for one of her biggest clients, juggling vendors and timelines from Victor's home office while he worked in the next room. Her phone rang with an unfamiliar number, and she answered absently while reviewing seating charts. Is this Lena Harper? Yes. Who's calling? My name is Detective Sarah Chen with the Chicago PD. I'm hoping you have a few minutes to answer some questions. Lena's stomach dropped. Questions about what? About your relationship with Victor Moretti. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Lena set down her pen carefully, her mind racing. I don't understand. What does Victor have to do with anything? We're investigating some business dealings Mr. Moretti may be involved in. You're not in any trouble, Ms. Harper, but we've noticed you spending considerable time with him, and we're hoping you might be able to provide some insight into his activities. Lena's throat felt tight. I don't know anything about his business. Nothing at all? You've been dating for 3 months. You spend nights at his residence. You've met his associates. I've met his friends, not his business partners. And Victor doesn't discuss work with me. It's complicated and boring, and I'm not interested. The lie came easily, automatically, but her hands were shaking. Detective Chen sighed. Ms. Harper, I understand your loyalty, but Victor Moretti is not who you think he is. He's connected to some very dangerous people. If he's keeping you in the dark, it's because he knows you wouldn't approve of what he's really doing. I think we're done here. Lena's voice was steadier than she felt. If you have questions for Victor, ask him directly. Don't try to use me as some kind of informant. If you change your mind, Lena hung up. Her hands were trembling violently now, her heart hammering against her ribs. She stared at her phone like it was a bomb that had just detonated her carefully constructed sense of security. Lena? She looked up to find Victor standing in the doorway, his expression sharp with concern. What happened? You're pale. The police just called me. Every muscle in Victor's body went rigid. What did they say? They wanted to ask questions about you, about your business. They said, her voice cracked. They said you're connected to dangerous people, that you're not who I think you are. Victor crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her hands in his. What did you tell them? That I don't know anything about your business, that they should talk to you directly. Lena looked up at him, searching his face. Victor, what's going on? Why are the police investigating you? Because they don't understand what I do. They see patterns and assume criminality. Is it criminality? Some of it exists in gray areas, yes. I've told you that. But I'm not running drugs or guns or any of the things they're probably implying. Then what are you running? Victor's jaw tightened. He released her hands and stepped back, and Lena felt the distance like a physical blow. I can't tell you that. Not because I don't trust you, but because the less you know, the safer you are. That detective said you're keeping me in the dark because you know I wouldn't approve. She's trying to turn you against me. Victor's voice was hard. It's a standard tactic. Make you doubt me so you'll become an asset for them. Are you saying she's wrong? That there's nothing you're doing I wouldn't approve of? Silence. Heavy and damning. Lena felt something crack in her chest. Oh my God, Victor! I've never lied to you. He moved toward her again, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Everything I've told you is true. I operate in spaces most people don't see. I make decisions that aren't always clean. But I'm not a monster, Lena. I protect people who need protecting. I solve problems that can't be solved through legal channels. That's not reassuring. I know, but it's honest. His thumb brushed her cheek. I told you this would be hard. That there would be things I couldn't explain. Are you telling me you can't handle it? I'm telling you I'm scared. Lena's voice broke. A detective called me, Victor. She knows where I live. She knows we're together. What if they try to use me against you? What if being with you puts me in danger? I won't let that happen. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Victor's voice was absolute. I have resources the police don't even know exist. Eyes everywhere. People loyal to me in ways that matter. If anyone threatens you, I'll know, and I'll handle it. By doing what? Intimidating them like you did Maya's ex? If necessary, yes. Lena pulled away from him, her mind reeling. This was too much, too real. She'd known intellectually that Victor operated outside normal boundaries, but having the police call her, having them imply he was dangerous, having Victor basically confirm it, that made it concrete in a way she wasn't prepared for. I need some air, she said. Lena, just give me an hour, okay? Let me think. Victor looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded tightly. Take all the time you need, but please, don't talk to that detective again. Not without a lawyer present. You think they'll call back? I think they'll try every avenue to get to me, and you're the most obvious one. The words settled like ice in Lena's stomach. She grabbed her coat and purse and fled the penthouse, needing distance, needing to breathe without Victor's presence overwhelming her better judgment. She ended up at Maya's apartment, where her friend took one look at her face and immediately poured wine. What happened? Lena told her everything. The phone call, Victor's non-answers, the creeping realization that she'd fallen in love with someone whose life might actually be dangerous in ways she'd been deliberately ignoring. Maya listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with every detail. When Lena finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Okay, Maya said finally. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be really honest with me. Okay. Do you think Victor would hurt you, like physically hurt you? No, never. Do you think he's involved in things that hurt other people? Lena's throat tightened. I don't know, maybe. He said he doesn't kill people, but he's admitted to having people hurt when they threaten him. And how do you feel about that? I don't know. Lena buried her face in her hands. I should feel horrified, right? I should run. But Maya, he's also the man who protected you from Derek, who makes me feel safer than I've ever felt, who looks at me like I'm the most important thing in his world. You love him. I'm terrified of him. I love him. Both things are true at the same time, and I don't know what to do with that. Maya squeezed her hand. I think you need to decide what your boundaries actually are. Not what you think they should be, but what you can genuinely live with. Because Lena, if you can't accept his world, whatever that world is, then this relationship will destroy you. But if you can accept it, you need to commit fully. No half measures. How do I know which choice is right? You ask yourself which one you can live with, walking away or staying and dealing with the uncertainty. There's no perfect answer here, babe, just the one you can live with. Lena sat with that truth for a long time, sipping wine and staring at Maya's ceiling. Finally, she pulled out her phone and texted Victor. Lena, I'm coming back. We need to talk. Victor, I'll be here. The drive back to his building felt both too short and endless. Lena rehearsed what she wanted to say, but every version sounded either too harsh or too accommodating. By the time she reached his door, her carefully planned speech had evaporated entirely. Victor opened the door before she could knock. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, shirt untucked, eyes shadowed with something that looked like fear. I'm sorry, he said immediately, for putting you in this position, for not being able to give you the answers you deserve, for being too selfish to walk away when I should have. Stop! Lena stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I need to say something, and I need you to just listen. Victor nodded, his jaw tight. I'm scared, Lena said. I'm really, really scared. Of what you do, of what it might mean for my safety, of loving someone whose world I don't fully understand. But I'm more scared of losing you. And I've realized that my choice isn't between perfect safety and relationship with you. It's between the uncertainty of being with you and the certainty of being miserable without you. Victor's expression cracked, vulnerability flooding through. Lena, I'm not done. She moved closer, her hands finding his chest. I need you to promise me something. No more secrets about things that directly affect me. If the police are investigating you, I need to know. If something threatens our safety, I need to know. I'm not asking for every detail of your business, but I can't be blindsided like this again. I promise. No more blindsides. Anything that touches you, you'll know about. And I need you to promise that you'll never ask me to do anything illegal. I won't lie to police. I won't hide evidence. I won't be complicit in anything I can't morally justify. I would never ask that of you. Your integrity is part of why I love you. Okay. Lena took a shaky breath. Then I'm in, completely. Whatever this is, whatever comes, I'm choosing you. Victor pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. Thank you. God, Lena, thank you. I know I don't deserve... Don't. She pulled back to look at him. Don't say you don't deserve me. We both get to choose this. I'm choosing you. You're choosing me. That's enough. He kissed her with a desperation that made her knees weak, his hands framing her face like she was something precious and fragile. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I need to tell you something, he said quietly, about the investigation. Okay? The police think I'm laundering money through legitimate businesses. They're not entirely wrong. Some of my clients exist in gray areas, people who need to move assets quietly, who can't use traditional banking. I facilitate that. I don't ask questions about where the money comes from, as long as it's not drugs or trafficking. Lena's stomach churned. That's money laundering, Victor. It's financial services for people who can't access traditional systems. Some of them are criminals, yes, but some of them are just people in complicated situations who need help. How do you know which is which? I don't always, but I have rules, lines I won't cross, and I'm very, very careful about who I work with. The police obviously think you've crossed those lines. The police think everyone who operates outside traditional channels is a criminal. They're building a case based on associations and patterns, but they don't have evidence of actual wrongdoing because I haven't actually done anything wrong. Legally ambiguous, yes. Illegal, no. You sound very confident about that distinction. I have excellent lawyers who help me stay on the right side of that line. Victor's hand slid down to her waist. I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're defending if they come at you again. I'm not a saint, Lena, but I'm not the villain they're trying to paint me as either. Lena processed this, trying to reconcile the man she loved with the picture he was painting. If they build their case, what happens? They won't. I'm too careful. But if they somehow did, if charges were filed, I'd cooperate fully, prove my business is legitimate, and I'd keep you completely separate from all of it. How? By making sure there's no evidence you were ever involved in my business in any way, because you haven't been. You're not culpable for anything I do, Lena. You're just the woman I love who happens to be dating someone with a complicated professional life. That feels like splitting hairs. It's the truth. Victor's expression was earnest. You are not complicit in my work. You've never been, and I'll make sure it stays that way. Lena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was setting in. The emotional roller coaster of the day had drained her completely. I believe you. I'm choosing to believe you. That's all I ask. They moved to the couch, tangling together in a way that felt like mutual reassurance. Victor held her like she might disappear, and Lena let herself be held, needing the physical proof that they were okay, that they'd survived this. What happens now? She asked into the quiet. Now I do what I should have done weeks ago. I step back from some of my more questionable clients. I create more distance between my legitimate businesses and my gray area consulting. I make it impossible for anyone to build a case against me. You do that? I do anything to protect you. And if that means restructuring my entire professional life, then that's what I'll do. Victor, I mean it. He tilted her face up to look at him. You're more important than any business deal, than any client, than any amount of money. I've built an empire on being untouchable, but you've made me realize I don't want to be untouchable anymore. I want to be yours. And if that means making myself vulnerable, then I'll do it. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. That's the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. I have that effect on people. She laughed despite herself, the sound watery but genuine. They stayed like that for hours, talking through logistics and boundaries and what the next steps looked like. Victor called his lawyers on speaker, explaining the situation and asking for an audit of all his business dealings. He made it clear that anything questionable needed to be terminated immediately, consequences be damned. Watching him dismantle pieces of his carefully constructed world for her was both humbling and overwhelming. This was real. He meant every word. And Lena realized that her choice to stay wasn't just about love. It was about witnessing someone willing to change, to grow, to sacrifice for something that mattered more than power or control. Around midnight, Victor's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. What is it? Lena asked. One of my associates. There's a situation that needs my attention. Tonight? Unfortunately, yes. He kissed her forehead. I'm sorry, this is exactly what I'm trying to move away from, but I have commitments I have to honor before I can fully extract myself. How long will you be gone? A few hours. Maybe more. It's delicate. Lena forced herself to nod, to be understanding, even though panic was clawing at her throat. Okay, be safe. Always. Victor stood, then paused. Do you want to stay here, or should I have James take you home? I'll stay, if that's okay. Relief flooded his features. It's more than okay. He seemed to struggle for words. It means everything. After he left, Lena tried to sleep but couldn't. Her mind kept circling back to the detective's words, to Victor's admissions, to the impossible situation she'd chosen to stay in. She was in love with a man who existed in shadows, who wielded power most people never saw, who had just promised to change his entire life for her. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something vast and unknowable, trusting that the ground would hold. She must have eventually dozed off, because she woke to Victor sliding back into bed, his skin cold and his movements careful not to disturb her. Lena rolled over, finding him in the darkness. How did it go? It's handled. His arm came around her waist, pulling her close. Go back to sleep. Was it dangerous? Victor hesitated. No more than usual. That's not comforting. I know, but I'm here. I'm safe. We're safe. Lena pressed her face into his shoulder, breathing in his scent, letting the solid warmth of him chase away the lingering fear. I hate this. The not knowing. The waiting. I know, it won't be like this forever. You can't promise that. No, Victor agreed quietly. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make it true. It would have to be enough, because Lena had made her choice and there was no going back now. She was in this, fully, completely, with all the uncertainty and danger that entailed. She just hoped they both survived it. The weeks that followed were tense with waiting. Victor moved with methodical precision, systematically unwinding business relationships and restructuring his operations. Lena watched him work with a focus that bordered on obsessive, taking calls at all hours, meeting with lawyers and accountants, building walls between his legitimate holdings and anything that could be considered questionable. "You're exhausted," she told him one evening, finding him at his desk with dark circles under his eyes. "I'm almost done. 2 more clients to extract from, and then I'm clean." "And those clients are okay with being extracted from?" Victor's smile was grim. "They don't have a choice. I'm giving them fair notice and referrals to other consultants. If they're smart, they'll accept gracefully. And if they're not smart, then I'll handle it." The way he said it made Lena's skin prickle, but she didn't push. Some things, she'd learned, she was better off not knowing in detail. What she did know was that Victor was keeping his promise. Every decision that affected her, he discussed openly. Every potential threat, he warned her about in advance. And slowly, incrementally, the weight of the police investigation seemed to fade as Victor's businesses became increasingly legitimate and above board. Detective Chen called once more, but Lena was ready this time. She politely declined to answer questions without a lawyer present, and the detective never called back. Victor's lawyers sent formal complaints about harassment, and whatever interest the police had seemed to dissipate like smoke. By Christmas, things felt almost normal. As normal as they could be when your boyfriend was a recovering gray market consultant with security teams and lawyers on speed dial. "I got you something," Victor said on Christmas Eve, pulling a small wrapped box from his jacket pocket. They were at Lena's apartment, sitting by her tiny tree with its mismatched ornaments and blinking lights. Victor had brought champagne and takeout from her favorite Thai place, and they'd spent the evening wrapped in blankets, watching terrible Christmas movies and pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. "Victor, we said no gifts. We said no expensive gifts. This isn't expensive, it's just..." He ran his hand through his hair, suddenly uncertain in a way she'd never seen. "Open it." Lena unwrapped the box carefully, her heart already beating too fast. Inside was a key, simple, silver, attached to a keychain with his initials. "It's to my place," Victor said quietly. "I want you to have access. To come and go as you please. To treat it like yours. Victor, I know we haven't talked about moving in together. I know it's too soon, but I want you to know you're always welcome, always wanted, that my space is your space whenever you need it." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "This is a really big step." "I know, and if it's too much, I understand, but Lena, you're it for me. This isn't temporary, and I want you to know that." She looked at the key, at the physical representation of trust and commitment, and felt something settle in her chest that felt an awful lot like certainty. "Okay, okay, okay, I'll take the key. And Victor, I got you something too." She pulled a small wrapped package from under the tree, and handed it to him. He opened it carefully, revealing a framed photograph Lena had taken weeks ago. Victor standing by his windows, the city behind him, his expression unguarded and genuinely happy. "You look free in this photo," Lena explained softly. "Like you're not carrying the weight of everything. I wanted you to remember what that feels like." Victor stared at the photo for a long moment, his throat working. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you. So much it terrifies me sometimes." "I love you too, terrifying parts and all." He set the frame down carefully and pulled her into his lap, kissing her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the city in quiet white. And for the first time since the detective's phone call, Lena felt like maybe, possibly, they were going to be okay. They had chosen each other, complications and all. And that choice, renewed daily with honesty and trust, felt like the strongest foundation she'd ever stood on. The certainty Lena felt that Christmas night proved fragile in the face of reality. January brought a bitter cold that seemed to seep into everything, and with it came the kind of tension that made even simple conversations feel weighted with unspoken concerns. Victor was distracted, taking calls at odd hours, his jaw perpetually tight with stress he refused to fully explain. And Lena, despite her best intentions to trust the process, felt the distance growing between them like frost on a window. "You're not sleeping," she observed one night, finding Victor in his office at 3 a.m, surrounded by documents and spreadsheets. He looked up, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. "I'm almost done with the last extraction. Just need to finalize the transition." "Victor, you've been saying that for 2 weeks. It's complicated. These clients don't want to let go easily." "Are they threatening you?" His hesitation was answer enough. Lena felt ice settle in her stomach as she crossed the room and closed his laptop with deliberate care. "Talk to me, right now. No more protecting me from information I need to know." Victor leaned back in his chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "One of my former clients is making things difficult. He believes I owe him continued service regardless of my decision to step away." "What's his name?" "That's not important." "Victor, Lena, please. The less you know about him, the safer you are." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that's going to destroy us." Lena's voice was sharp with frustration. "You promised me honesty. You promised no more walls, but you're doing it again, shutting me out because you think it's protection. It is protection. It's isolation. You're carrying this alone when you don't have to. When I've told you repeatedly that I'm here, that I can handle the truth." Victor stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You want the truth? Fine." His name is Dominic Russo. He runs import-export operations that are partially legitimate and partially very much not. I helped him set up financial structures that allowed him to move money quietly. And now that I'm refusing to continue that work, he's threatening to expose every gray area transaction we ever conducted together. Lena absorbed this, fighting to keep her expression neutral even as panic clawed at her throat. "Could he? Expose you?" "Technically, yes, but it would expose him too. It's mutually assured destruction, which is usually enough to keep people rational." "Usually?" "Dominic is volatile, unpredictable. He takes things personally in ways that make him dangerous." "Define dangerous." Victor moved to the window, staring out at the frozen city. "He's never physically harmed me, but he's made it clear that continuing our professional relationship isn't optional in his mind. That walking away is a betrayal that requires consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "Reputation damage, interference with my legitimate businesses, making my life difficult in ways that are hard to trace back to him directly." Lena joined him at the window, her hand finding his. "And you're handling this alone because?" "Because involving you gives him leverage against me. If he knows I care about you, really cares, not just casual dating, then you become a target." "I'm already a target, Victor. The detective called me months ago. Anyone paying attention knows we're together. Your birthday party made it official." "That was different. That was visible, public, the kind of relationship people respect. This," he gestured between them, "the depth of this, the way you've become essential to my life, that's vulnerability I can't afford to show people like Dominic." "So what are you going to do? Pretend I don't matter? Push me away to protect me?" "No." Victor turned to face her fully, his hands framing her face. "I'm going to finish extracting myself from his business. Give him no choice but to accept it. And then I'm going to make sure everyone in my former world knows that you are completely off limits, that touching you would bring consequences they can't imagine." That sounds an awful lot like threatening people. "It's establishing boundaries using language they understand. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're staying in that world even while trying to leave it." Victor's expression cracked, showing the exhaustion and fear underneath. "I don't know how else to keep you safe. This is the only way I know." Lena felt her anger drain away, replaced by a sadness that sat heavy in her chest. I know, and that's what terrifies me, that you're so used to operating in shadows that you don't know how to trust the light. Then teach me. Because Lena, I want to be different. I want to be the man who deserves you, but I'm working with instincts built over decades, and they don't just disappear because I want them to. I'm not asking them to disappear. I'm asking you to let me in, to make decisions with me instead of for me, to trust that I'm strong enough to handle the truth, even when it's scary. Victor pulled her close, his arms tight around her. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. I know you are. But Victor, we need help. Professional help. Someone who can guide us through this transition better than we're managing on our own. You want to go back to therapy. I want us to go to therapy. Together. Before the distance between us becomes permanent. He was quiet for a long moment, his chin resting on top of her head. Okay. We'll call Dr. Morrison in the morning. Set up regular sessions. Thank you. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other against the uncertainty and fear that seemed to press in from all sides. And when they finally went to bed, Lena lay awake listening to Victor's breathing, wondering if love was enough when the obstacles felt insurmountable. The next morning brought a complication neither of them anticipated. Lena was at a client meeting when her phone rang with Victor's number. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. Hey, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back in? James is in the hospital. Lena's world tilted. What happened? He was mugged last night. Broken arm, concussion. They're keeping him for observation. Oh my God, will he be okay? Physically, yes, but Lena... Victor's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. This wasn't random. The attackers knew who he was. They delivered a message. From Dominic. Yes, telling me that my people aren't as protected as I think. That walking away has consequences. Lena felt cold rage flood through her. Where are you? At the hospital. But I need you to go back to your apartment, pack a bag, and go stay with Maya for a few days. Absolutely not. Lena, this isn't negotiable. You're right, it's not. I'm coming to the hospital, and then we're going to your place where your security actually exists. I'm not hiding at Maya's while you deal with this alone. If Dominic is escalating, then being apart makes us both more vulnerable. We're stronger together, Victor. You know that. His exhale was ragged. Northwestern Memorial, 5th floor. Lena grabbed her things, made apologies to her client, and was in a cab within 5 minutes. The drive seemed to take hours, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. James was hurt because of Victor's decision to go legitimate. Because Victor chose her, chose a different life, chose to walk away from people who didn't accept walking away as an option. She found Victor in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. He looked up when she entered, and the relief that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. You came. Of course I came. Lena wrapped her arms around him, feeling the tension vibrating through his frame. How is he? Stable. Angry, blaming himself for not seeing the attack coming. Victor's voice was rough. He's been with me for 8 years, Lena. He's not just an employee. He's family. And Dominic hurt him to get to me. What are you going to do? Victor pulled back, and the expression on his face made Lena's blood run cold. I'm going to end this, tonight, before anyone else gets hurt. How? By going to Dominic directly, making it clear that this stops now. That sounds like a spectacularly bad idea. It's the only idea that doesn't involve waiting for him to escalate further. He hurt James. What's next? Going after Marcus, after you? I can't sit here and wait to find out. Lena gripped his arms, forcing him to focus on her. Then we go together. Absolutely not. You don't get to make that decision alone. If you're walking into danger, I'm coming with you. Because 2 people are harder to intimidate than 1. And because maybe my presence will remind Dominic that you're not just some business associate. You're someone with a life, with people who matter, with reasons to resolve this peacefully. Or it puts you directly in his crosshairs. I'm already there, Victor. The moment James got hurt, the message was clear. Dominic is willing to go after people you care about. So let's remove the ambiguity. Let him see that I'm not afraid of him. You should be afraid of him. I am, but I'm more afraid of losing you because you made some noble, idiotic sacrifice trying to protect me. Victor closed his eyes, conflict written across every feature. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. It's one of my best qualities. Now, are we doing this together? Or am I following you anyway and making it more dangerous for both of us? Together, he said it like a surrender. But you stay close to me. You don't engage. You're there as support, not as a participant. Deal. They spent the next hour with James, who was groggy from painkillers but coherent enough to insist he was fine and that Victor needed to handle this Dominic situation before someone else gets hurt. When they left, Victor made a series of phone calls, his voice clipped and professional as he arranged a meeting with Dominic for that evening. Neutral location, he told Lena as they drove back to his apartment. Public enough that violence is unlikely, private enough that we can speak freely. Marcus is sending backup to watch from a distance. You've done this before. More times than I can count, but never with someone I love sitting beside me. It changes the calculation. How? Makes me more cautious, more willing to compromise, more aware of what I have to lose. They arrived at Victor's building, and he led her upstairs where they found Marcus already waiting in the living room, his expression grim. I don't like this, Marcus said without preamble. Dominic is unstable. Meeting with him face to face gives him too many opportunities. And not meeting with him leaves James's attack unanswered, shows weakness, invites escalation. Victor poured himself a drink, his movements controlled but tense. This ends tonight, one way or another. And she's going with you? Marcus gestured to Lena. She insists. Good. Dominic might respect the relationship, might make him think twice about doing something stupid. Or it might enrage him further, Victor countered. But Lena's right. We're stronger together. Marcus studied them both, then nodded slowly. I'll have 3 teams positioned around the location. Any sign of trouble, they move in immediately. And Victor, don't try to be a hero. The goal is de-escalation, not confrontation. I know. Do you? Because I've seen the look on your face. You want to hurt him for what he did to James. Of course I do, but I won't. Because that's exactly what he wants, an excuse to retaliate with maximum force. Victor set down his glass. I'm going to offer him a final settlement, enough money to make walking away worth his while. And if he refuses, I'm going to make it clear that continued aggression will result in federal involvement. He'll see that as a threat. It is a threat, but it's also reality. I have documentation of every questionable transaction he's ever been involved in. If he pushes me, I push back with evidence that puts him away for decades. Mutually assured destruction. Exactly. And Dominic is many things, but he's not suicidal. When faced with prison or profit, he'll choose profit. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he nodded. The meeting's at 9. That gives us 3 hours to prepare. Those 3 hours felt both endless and far too short. Lena changed into something that struck a balance between professional and intimidating. Black slacks, a silk blouse, heels that added 3 inches to her height. Victor watched her dress with an expression that was equal parts appreciation and concern. You look formidable, he said. That's the goal. I want Dominic to see that I'm not some delicate thing you're trying to protect. I'm a partner, an equal. You are absolutely my equal. That's never been in question. Then let's go show him that. The meeting location was a private room in an upscale restaurant in the Loop, the kind of place where business deals were made and discretion was guaranteed. They arrived 10 minutes early, Victor's hand warm and steady on Lena's lower back, as they were escorted to a table in the corner. Marcus's security teams were invisible but present. Lena could feel their watchful presence, even if she couldn't see them directly. Dominic Russo arrived exactly on time, flanked by 2 men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. He was shorter than Lena expected, maybe 5'8", with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than her car. But his eyes were sharp and calculating, assessing her and Victor with the kind of cold intelligence that made Lena's skin prickle. Victor? Dominic's voice was smooth, cultured, completely at odds with the violence he'd ordered against James. And you must be the famous Lena Harper. I've heard so much about you. Dominic. Victor remained seated, a subtle power play that Dominic clearly noticed. Thank you for meeting with us. Did I have a choice? Your message was quite insistent. Dominic settled into the chair across from them, dismissing his men with a wave. They stationed themselves by the door, watchful and ready. To what do I owe this pleasure? You had one of my people attacked. I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again. Attacked? How unfortunate. Though I can't imagine why you'd think I had anything to do with random street violence. Don't insult my intelligence, Dominic. We both know exactly what happened and why. You're unhappy that I'm terminating our business relationship. You wanted to send a message. Dominic's pleasant expression never wavered. Let's say, hypothetically, that someone was unhappy with your decision to abandon long-standing professional relationships. That person might feel betrayed, disrespected, concerned that their own interests were being jeopardized by your sudden attack of conscience. My conscience has nothing to do with it. I'm restructuring my life. That includes ending relationships that no longer serve my goals. And what goals are those? Respectability? Legitimacy? Dominic's eyes flicked to Lena. Love? All of the above, Victor said calmly, and I'm prepared to make it worth your while to accept that decision gracefully. Worth my while how? Victor slid an envelope across the table. Inside you'll find a cashier's check for $2 million, compensation for any inconvenience my departure causes. In exchange, you agree to terminate our professional relationship cleanly and completely. No retaliation, no interference. We go our separate ways. Dominic didn't touch the envelope. $2 million. That's generous. Almost insulting in its generosity, actually. Like you're trying to buy your way out of obligations that can't be bought. I'm offering you a clean exit. Take the money. Find another consultant. Move on. And if I don't want to move on, if I believe that certain commitments once made are permanent, then I go to federal prosecutors with evidence of every illegal transaction you've ever conducted. Tax evasion, money laundering, import violations. I have documents, Dominic. Dates, amounts, account numbers, everything they'd need to build an airtight case. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dominic's pleasant expression finally cracked, revealing something cold and furious beneath. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. $2 million and mutual silence, or federal prison and the destruction of everything you've built. You'd destroy yourself in the process. No, I wouldn't, because unlike you, I've been very careful to keep my activities on the right side of legal, ambiguous perhaps, but legal. Your operations, however, crossed that line repeatedly, and I documented every instance. Dominic was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving between Victor and Lena with calculating intensity. You've changed, Victor. The man I knew 5 years ago would never have made these threats. He understood loyalty, brotherhood, the rules of our world. I've grown up, Victor replied. Realize that loyalty built on fear isn't real loyalty. That the rules of your world are designed to trap people, not protect them. And I'm choosing a different path. Because of her. It wasn't a question. Dominic looked at Lena directly for the first time. You must be quite special, Ms. Harper, to convince Victor Moretti to throw away his empire. Lena met his gaze without flinching. He's not throwing anything away. He's choosing what matters over what's convenient. And yes, I'm part of that choice. But I didn't convince him of anything. Victor made these decisions himself. How noble, how romantic. Dominic's smile was sharp. Tell me, Ms. Harper, are you prepared for what happens when the shine wears off? When Victor realizes that legitimacy is boring, that playing by the rules doesn't give him the rush he's used to? Are you ready to watch him resent you for making him small? I haven't made him anything, Lena said quietly. I've just shown him there's more to life than power and control. And if you think choosing love over fear makes someone small, then I genuinely pity you. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Anger, maybe, or grudging respect. He finally picked up the envelope, opened it, examined the check with practiced efficiency. $2 million. And you walk away clean. Completely clean, Victor confirmed. No retaliation, no contact. We become strangers who used to know each other. And the documents you claim to have? Remain with my lawyers under seal. As long as you leave me and mine alone, they stay sealed forever. You move against me or anyone I care about, They go directly to federal prosecutors. Dominic slipped the check back into the envelope, tapping it against the table thoughtfully. You're serious about this? About leaving our world entirely? Completely serious. Then you're either the bravest man I know or the most foolish. Dominic stood, pocketing the envelope. I accept your terms. $2 million for a clean separation. But Victor, if you ever change your mind, if you ever want back in, the price of admission will be significantly higher. I won't change my mind. We'll see. People rarely stay satisfied with ordinary lives once they've tasted extraordinary ones. He nodded to Lena. Ms. Harper, I wish you luck. You'll need it, taming a man like Victor Moretti. He left without another word, his security falling into step behind him. The moment the door closed, Lena felt Victor's entire body sag with relief. It's done, he said quietly. It's actually done. You think he'll honor the agreement? I think he's smart enough to know that federal prison isn't worth whatever satisfaction he'd get from revenge. The money gives him face, lets him tell people he extracted a price for releasing me, and the threat keeps him honest. Marcus appeared from somewhere, his expression cautiously optimistic. That went better than I expected, though I don't trust him to stay gone permanently. Neither do I, Victor admitted, but it buys us time, distance, a chance to build something completely separate from that world. And if he comes back, then we handle it. But hopefully by then, I'll be so deeply legitimate that any attack on me just exposes him further. Victor stood, pulling Lena up with him. Let's go home. The drive back to his apartment was quiet, both of them processing what had just happened. In the elevator, Victor pulled Lena into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. Thank you, he murmured against her hair, for being there, for standing beside me, for saying exactly the right thing to Dominic. I meant every word. You're not small, Victor. You're choosing to be whole. There's a difference. I love you. So much it's actually terrifying sometimes. Good. I'd hate to be the only one who's terrified. They laughed, the sound shaky but genuine, and Lena realized they'd crossed another threshold. Another obstacle faced and overcome. Another piece of Victor's old life firmly in the past. The apartment felt different when they entered it, lighter somehow, like the shadows had finally receded. Victor poured them both wine, and they stood by the windows watching the city glitter below them, each lost in their own thoughts. What happens now? Lena asked finally. Now we live. Really live, without looking over our shoulders constantly. I focus on my legitimate businesses. You build your event planning empire. We figure out how to be normal people with normal problems. That sounds almost boring. Good. I'm ready for boring, ready for ordinary, ready for a life where the biggest crisis is running out of coffee or arguing about what to watch on TV. Lena turned in his arms, searching his face. You really mean that? I really do. These past few months, watching you navigate your career, seeing how you handle stress and success and challenges, it's shown me what actual accomplishment looks like. Not power over people, but creating value, making clients happy, building something meaningful. That's what I want, Lena, a meaningful life. With you. Then let's build it together, starting with couples therapy so we actually learn how to communicate properly instead of making dramatic gestures in expensive restaurants. Victor's laugh was warm and free. Deal, though I reserve the right to occasionally make dramatic gestures. It's part of my charm. It's part of something, that's for sure. They stayed up late that night, talking through everything, their fears, their hopes, the practical logistics of building a life together. And when they finally went to bed, Lena felt a peace she hadn't experienced in months. The threats were handled, the complications were managed. And the future, for the first time since that reckless kiss in a crowded bar, felt genuinely hopeful. She fell asleep in Victor's arms, dreaming of ordinary mornings and quiet evenings, and a love built on choice rather than chaos. And when she woke the next morning to find Victor already up, making breakfast and humming tunelessly to himself, she knew they were going to be okay. Not perfect, not without challenges, but okay. Together, which was more than enough. The morning after this meeting with Dominic felt like waking into a different life. Lena opened her eyes to find sunlight streaming through the windows, and Victor already awake beside her, propped up on one elbow, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "How long have you been staring at me?" she mumbled, still half asleep. "Long enough to realize I want to wake up like this every morning for the rest of my life." Lena's eyes flew open fully. "That's a very serious statement for 7 in the morning. I'm a very serious person. You knew this about me." But Victor was smiling, that rare, unguarded smile that transformed his entire face. "Though I should probably wait until after coffee to make life-altering declarations." Probably wise. They made breakfast together, moving around the kitchen with the easy familiarity of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. Victor made espresso while Lena scrambled eggs, and they ate standing at the counter, stealing bites from each other's plates and talking about nothing important. It felt profoundly, beautifully ordinary. "I have a client meeting at 10, Lena said, checking her phone. "Corporate event in June, but I should be done by noon." "Cancel it." She looked up, surprised. "What?" "Cancel it. Or reschedule. I want to take you somewhere today." "Victor, I can't just cancel on clients. Please." He set down his coffee cup, his expression earnest. "Just this once. I have something I want to show you, and it can't wait." Lena studied his face, seeing the barely contained excitement there, the nervous energy that was so unlike his usual controlled demeanor. "Okay, but you're going to owe me if this client gets mad." "I'll owe you anything you want." She made the call, rescheduling with profuse apologies and promises of a discount, while Victor disappeared into his bedroom. He emerged 20 minutes later in jeans and a sweater, casual clothes she'd rarely seen him wear, and practically vibrated with anticipation. "Where are we going?" "You'll see. Dress warm." An hour later, they were driving north out of the city in Victor's car, the skyline shrinking behind them as suburbs gave way to smaller towns and eventually to countryside. Lena watched the landscape change, curiosity warring with contentment. She'd expected Victor to explain, but he seemed perfectly happy to let the mystery build, one hand on the wheel and the other laced with hers. "Are you kidnapping me?" she asked lightly, "because I feel like I should have told someone where I was going." "Maya knows. I texted her this morning." "You texted Maya before telling me what we're doing?" "I needed her help picking something out. She has excellent taste." "Victor Moretti, what have you done?" His smile was mysterious and entirely too satisfied. "Patience, love. We're almost there." 20 minutes later, they turned onto a long driveway lined with bare trees, their branches creating a canopy overhead. At the end of the drive sat a house. No, a home that made Lena's breath catch. It was beautiful in an understated way, all stone and wood and large windows that would flood the interior with light. Not ostentatious, not the kind of mansion Victor could easily afford, but something warmer, something that looked like it was meant to be lived in rather than displayed. "What is this?" Lena asked as Victor parked. "Come see." He led her to the front door, producing a key that turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the house was empty, but immaculate. Hardwood floors throughout, a living room with a massive fireplace, a kitchen that opened onto a dining area with windows overlooking what would be a garden in spring. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, each with its own character, and a master suite that took Lena's breath away with its vaulted ceilings and balcony overlooking acres of property. "Victor," Lena breathed, standing in the middle of the master bedroom. "This house is incredible. Are you thinking of buying it?" "I already did, 3 weeks ago." She spun to face him. "You what?" "I bought it. For us. If you want it." He moved closer, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I know we haven't talked about leaving the city. I know your business is there, your friends, your whole life. But Lena, I wanted us to have options. A place where we could escape the noise and pressure, where we could build something completely separate from my past. You bought us a house. I bought us a possibility. We don't have to move here. We can keep it as a weekend place or sell it if you hate it. But I wanted you to see it, to understand that when I say I'm building a future with you, I mean it, literally." Lena walked to the windows, looking out at the property. The bare trees that would bloom in spring, the space that could become gardens or play areas or whatever they wanted. She could see it suddenly, vividly, mornings on that balcony with coffee, summer barbecues, maybe someday children running through those rooms. a life so normal and beautiful it made her want to cry. "When did you have time to do this?" she asked, her voice thick. "I've been looking for months, since before Christmas. Marcus helped me find it. His wife knows the area, and Maya came out last week to make sure it wasn't completely wrong for you." "Maya saw this before me?" "I needed a woman's perspective, and she swore she wouldn't tell you." Victor came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "I know it's presumptuous. I know we're not even engaged yet. But Lena, I needed you to see that I'm serious, that this isn't just talk about changing my life. It's action. It's commitment." Lena turned in his arms, tears streaming down her face. "It's perfect. The house is absolutely perfect." Relief flooded his features. "You like it?" "I love it. I love that you thought about our future enough to do this. I love that you involved Maya. I love that you're standing here nervous about whether I approve when you've probably negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. Those deals never mattered like this does." She kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and overwhelming emotion into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "There's one more thing," he said quietly. "I'm not sure I can handle one more thing. You've kind of maxed out my capacity for surprises. This one's important." He stepped back, and Lena saw his hand shake slightly as he reached into his pocket. When he pulled out a small velvet box, her heart stopped entirely. "Victor, I know I said I'd wait. I know we agreed to take our time. But Lena, last night when we faced Dominic together, when you stood beside me and refused to be intimidated, when you saw the absolute worst of my world and chose to stay anyway, I realized I don't want to wait anymore." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was somehow both simple and breathtaking, a perfect diamond set in platinum, elegant without being ostentatious. "I love you. I want to marry you. I want to fill this house with our life together. So Lena Harper, will you—" "Yes." She didn't let him finish. "Yes, absolutely yes. Obviously yes." Victor's laugh was shocked and delighted. "I had a whole speech planned. Save it for the wedding vows. Right now I just need you to put that ring on my finger before I start hyperventilating." He did, his hand steady despite the emotion in his eyes, and the ring fit perfectly because of course it did. Maya had probably stolen one of Lena's other rings to get the size. Lena stared at it, at the physical proof that this was real, that Victor Moretti wanted forever with her, and felt joy so complete it was almost painful. "We're engaged," she said wonderingly. "We're engaged," Victor confirmed. "And before you ask, yes, I already talked to your parents, called them last week." "You talked to my parents?" "I'm old-fashioned about some things. Your father gave his blessing. Your mother cried and told me I'd better treat you right, or she'd hunt me down personally." "That sounds like Mom." Lena laughed through her tears. "You've really thought of everything." "I tried, though I'm open to being surprised. What do you want, Lena? Big wedding or small? Soon or do we wait? City or here?" "I want—" She paused, considering. "I want small. Just family and close friends. I want it to be about us, not about spectacle. And I want it soon. Not rushed, but not years from now either. Is summer too soon?" "Summer is perfect. June, maybe? When the garden here will be in bloom?" "You want to get married here?" "I want to start our marriage in the place where we'll build our life, if that's what you want too." Lena looked around the empty master bedroom, imagining it filled with furniture and photos and all the accumulated debris of a shared life. "I want that. I want all of it. This house, a June wedding, a future where the most dramatic thing that happens is arguing about paint colors." "We can arrange that, though fair warning, I have very strong opinions about paint colors." "Of course you do." They spent the rest of the day exploring the house and property, making plans and dreaming out loud. Victor showed her the office space he'd already envisioned for her business, the room that could be a library or a nursery depending on what they decided, the garage that could fit 4 cars, but he thought maybe they'd use part of it for a workshop. "A workshop for what?" Lena asked. "I don't know yet, but I like the idea of having space to build things, create things with my hands instead of just moving money around." "You want to take up carpentry?" "Maybe, or metalwork or pottery. I want to learn things that have nothing to do with business. Things that are just for me. For us. Lena felt her heart squeeze. This was what she'd hoped for. Victor not just leaving his old life behind, but actively building a new one. Finding joy in ordinary hobbies and simple pleasures instead of power and control. They drove back to the city as the sun set, both of them quiet with contentment. When they pulled up to Victor's building, Lena was surprised to see Marcus waiting in the lobby. "Is something wrong?" Victor asked immediately, tension flooding back into his shoulders. "No, nothing wrong, just news I wanted to deliver in person." Marcus grinned. "Dominic Russo left the country this morning, private jet to the Cayman Islands. My sources say he's relocating permanently." Victor's entire body sagged with relief. "He's really gone?" "He's really gone. Apparently the $2 million was enough to fund a very comfortable retirement in a place with no extradition treaty. He's officially someone else's problem now." "That's..." Victor ran his hand through his hair. "That's the best news I've heard in months." "I thought you'd appreciate it. Also, congratulations." Marcus nodded to Lena's hand where the ring caught the light. "Maya called me an hour ago, completely hysterical with excitement. I take it she said yes?" "She said yes before I finished asking," Victor said, pulling Lena close. "Smart woman. Marriage will be good for you, Victor. Give you something to focus on besides work and worry." "That's the plan. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have, but it would have been messier and far less successful. That's what friends are for." Marcus clapped Victor on the shoulder. "I'll let you two celebrate. But Victor, I'm happy for you, genuinely happy. You deserve this." After Marcus left, Victor and Lena went upstairs, and the moment the door closed behind them, Victor pulled her into a kiss that was equal parts relief and celebration and overwhelming gratitude. "Dominic's gone," he murmured against her lips. "Actually gone. We're free, Lena. Completely free. We were always free. We just had to fight for it. We did fight for it, together. And we won." They celebrated properly that night, christening their engagement with champagne and takeout and the kind of intimacy that came from knowing they'd overcome every obstacle. And in the morning, when Lena woke to find Victor already on the phone coordinating security removal and business restructuring, she realized how much had changed. 6 months ago, those calls would have been about maintaining control and managing threats. Now they were about dismantling unnecessary protections and simplifying a life that no longer needed complexity. The next few months unfolded with startling normalcy. Lena threw herself into wedding planning with Maya's enthusiastic help, choosing simple elegance over elaborate spectacle. Victor reduced his security to a single driver and minimal protection, proving that Dominic's departure really had removed the need for constant vigilance. They split their time between the penthouse and the new house, slowly furnishing it and making it theirs. Dr. Morrison guided them through the transition with professional skill, helping them navigate the shift from crisis management to actual partnership. They learned to communicate without assuming the worst, to share decision-making instead of one person dictating terms, to trust that disagreements didn't threaten the foundation they'd built. "You've both grown tremendously," Dr. Morrison observed during one session in April. "When you first came to me, you were two people trying to force incompatible lives together. Now you're partners building something new entirely." "It helps that the external threats are gone," Victor said. "The threats gave you excuse to avoid the real work, which was learning to be vulnerable with each other, to admit weakness, to ask for help." Dr. Morrison smiled. "You're ready to graduate, I think. Unless you want to continue?" Lena looked at Victor, seeing the question in his eyes. "I think we're okay. But maybe we check in quarterly, just to make sure we stay on track?" "I think that's wise. Marriage will bring new challenges. Having professional support available is never a bad idea." They left that session hand in hand, and Lena felt a satisfaction that went bone deep. They'd done the work, put in the hours and the emotional labor and the uncomfortable conversations, and they'd come out the other side stronger. May brought warmth and the first real blooms in the garden at their new house. Victor hired a landscaper who worked with Lena to design something beautiful, but manageable. Roses and peonies and flowering trees that would provide shade and beauty without requiring constant maintenance. Watching the garden take shape felt metaphorical somehow. like they were cultivating their future with the same care and intention. My mother wants to host an engagement party, Lena mentioned one evening as they stood on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. I know, she called me yesterday to coordinate. I told her whatever she wants is fine. You're very agreeable suddenly. I'm marrying the woman I love. My former enemies have fled the country. My businesses are thriving with legitimate clients. I can afford to be agreeable about party planning. Lena leaned into him, content. When did you become so well adjusted? When I realized that fighting for control all the time was exhausting. That letting go and trusting the people I love was actually more powerful than any intimidation tactic. Look at you, being emotionally mature. Dr. Morrison would be so proud. The engagement party happened 2 weeks later, a beautiful affair at Lena's parents' home, with 50 guests who'd watched their relationship unfold with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. Maya gave a toast that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Marcus talked about watching Victor transform from a ruthless businessman into someone capable of genuine partnership. And Lena's father, who'd been skeptical of Victor at first, publicly welcomed him to the family with warmth that made Victor's eyes suspiciously bright. Your family is wonderful, Victor told Lena later, dancing with her in her parents' backyard under strings of lights. They like you. My dad told me earlier that any man willing to go to therapy and buy a house in the suburbs for his fiancée is a keeper. I like that I passed the test. You passed all the tests, Victor. You've exceeded every expectation I had, which, considering my first impression of you was terrifying crime lord, is really saying something. I was never a crime lord. I was a consultant with questionable clients. Semantics. The point is, you've become everything I didn't know I needed. A partner who challenges me and supports me and isn't afraid to change when change is necessary. Victor pulled her closer, swaying to music that was probably too fast for slow dancing, but neither of them cared. I love you, Lena Harper. Soon to be Lena Moretti. Actually, I'm thinking Lena Harper Moretti. I've built a business under Harper. Seems silly to change it completely. Harper Moretti. I like it. It's us. Both parts equally important. June arrived with perfect weather and the kind of nervous excitement that came with major life transitions. The week before the wedding, Lena moved her remaining belongings from her apartment to their house, officially making it their primary residence. The penthouse would stay for when they needed to be in the city, but this house with its gardens and space and quiet, this was home. The wedding itself was everything Lena had envisioned. 50 guests in the garden, chairs set up on the lawn, an arch covered in white roses where she and Victor would exchange vows. She wore a simple dress that Maya had helped her find, elegant without being fussy, romantic without being overly dramatic. And when she walked down the makeshift aisle on her father's arm, seeing Victor waiting for her with tears in his eyes and a smile that could have powered the city, she felt a certainty so complete it was almost overwhelming. This was right. This was always meant to happen. From that first reckless kiss to this moment, every choice had led here. The ceremony was short and personal, vows they'd written themselves that made half the guests cry and the other half cheer. Victor promised to always choose her, to communicate even when it was hard, to build a life based on partnership rather than control. Lena promised to stand beside him through uncertainty, to challenge him when he needed challenging, to love him not despite his past, but because of how he'd grown from it. When the officiant pronounced them married and Victor kissed her with a thoroughness that made Maya wolf whistle, Lena felt like every difficult moment, every uncertain conversation, every choice to stay instead of run had been validated. The reception was a celebration in the truest sense: good food, better wine, dancing on the lawn as the sun set and lights twinkled overhead. Marcus gave a toast about transformation and second chances. Maya told embarrassing stories about Lena's dating history and declared Victor the only man who'd ever been worthy. And Lena's mother pulled Victor aside for a conversation that Lena couldn't hear, but that left him looking humbled and grateful. "What did she say to you?" Lena asked later, finding a quiet moment with her new husband while their guests danced and celebrated. "She told me she'd watch me at family dinners, at the engagement party, in the way I looked at you, and she said she'd never seen someone so completely devoted to making their partner happy. That she was proud to call me her son." Lena felt tears sting her eyes. She means it. My mom doesn't say things she doesn't mean. I know. That's what made it so. His voice caught. I spent so many years thinking family was something I'd traded away for ambition, that I'd made choices that put me outside the possibility of belonging to something like this. And then you walked into my life and brought me back to it. But you brought yourself back, Victor. I just gave you a reason to want to. They danced as the night deepened, surrounded by people who loved them. In a garden they'd planted together, starting a marriage built on choice and honesty and the deliberate decision to keep choosing each other every day. Later, after the guests had left and they were alone in their house, Victor carried Lena over the threshold with traditional ceremony that made her laugh and protest that she was perfectly capable of walking. I know you are, but I've been waiting months to do this, so humor me. He set her down in the living room, and they stood there for a moment, taking in the reality of it. They were married. This was their home. Their future stretched out before them, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. What are you thinking? Victor asked softly. I'm thinking about that night in the bar. How I walked up to you on a dare with absolutely no idea what I was starting. Best dare anyone ever made. Maya thinks so too. She's already planning to make a speech about it at every anniversary party for the rest of our lives. I can live with that. Victor pulled her close. Thank you. For what? For kissing me that night. For coming back when you could have run. For standing beside me when my world got complicated. For loving me enough to demand I be better. His hands framed her face. For choosing this, choosing us, choosing a future I didn't think I deserved. You deserve it, Victor. You deserve all of it, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you know that. They went upstairs to the bedroom they'd furnished together, to the bed where they'd slept and fought and reconciled and planned their future. And as Victor made love to his wife with a tenderness that made her weep, Lena understood finally what it meant to be completely, utterly home. Not in a place, though she loved this house. Not in a city, though Chicago would always be special. But in a person. In the choice they'd made to commit to each other, not just once at an altar, but every day in small moments and big decisions. The next morning, Lena woke to find Victor already up, making breakfast and humming tunelessly like he always did when he was happy. She joined him in the kitchen, stealing bites of bacon and kissing him between tasks, and they ate on the balcony watching the sun rise over their property. So, Victor said, refilling her coffee. Now what? Now we live. Build your consulting business with only legitimate clients. Grow my event planning company. Maybe travel. Maybe adopt a dog. Maybe think about kids in a year or two. That sounds perfect. Incredibly, beautifully boring. The best kind of boring. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to arguing about dishwasher loading technique and what color to paint the guest room. That's because you are secretly a domestic goddess trapped in a former crime consultant's body. I was never a crime consultant. Semantics, darling. You were crime adjacent, but now you're just mine. My husband, my partner, my perfectly reformed bad boy who learned to communicate his feelings. Victor pulled her into his lap, his arms secure around her. And you're my perfectly reckless wife who dared to kiss a stranger and accidentally reformed him. Not accidentally, very deliberately, with lots of therapy and hard conversations. True. Nothing about us has been accidental. Even that first kiss, you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Potential, possibility, someone worth the risk. You were absolutely worth the risk, even if you did make me face down mobsters and federal investigations. I prefer to think of those as character-building experiences. That's one way to phrase it. They sat like that for a long time, drinking coffee and watching the world wake up around them, content in the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Not perfectly, because perfect was impossible, but honestly, with communication and therapy and the willingness to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. The phone rang eventually, breaking their peaceful morning. Maya, calling to dissect every moment of the wedding and demand to know when they were thinking about kids because she wanted to be godmother. We've been married less than 24 hours, Lena protested. I'm planning ahead. Victor, back me up here. You're a planner. Tell her you want kids. I want kids, Victor said obediently. Eventually. after we've had at least a year to enjoy being married without also being parents. See? He's reasonable. Learn from him. They spent the day fielding calls from well-wishers and family, cleaning up from the wedding, taking a walk through their property, and discovering corners they hadn't fully explored yet. And that evening, they sat on their porch swing watching fireflies emerge as dusk settled, both of them quiet with satisfaction. "I'm happy," Lena said softly. "Genuinely, completely happy. Are you?" "I'm happier than I knew it was possible to be, and that terrifies me a little, if I'm honest." "Why?" "Because I spent so many years thinking happiness was weakness, that being content made you vulnerable, and now I'm both, and it feels like standing on a cliff edge." "But you're not standing alone. We're standing together, and if one of us slips, the other one's there to catch them." Victor turned to look at her, his expression full of wonder. "How did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just stubborn enough to believe we can have this, that we deserve normal, beautiful, boring happiness." "Then I'll be stubborn too. We'll be stubborn together." "That sounds perfect." And it was. Not perfect in the flawless sense, because life was messy and complicated and full of surprises, but perfect in the way that mattered. Two people who'd found each other against unlikely odds, who'd fought for their relationship through real obstacles, who'd chosen each other deliberately and kept choosing each other every day. What started as a dare became a kiss. The kiss became a conversation. The conversation became a relationship. And the relationship became a life built on trust and honesty and the courage to believe that love was worth the risk. Lena Harper Moretti and Victor Moretti built that life together in a house outside Chicago where gardens bloomed and fireflies danced, and ordinary happiness was the most extraordinary thing either of them had ever known. And they lived it fully, gratefully, together. Because some stories don't end with the wedding, they begin there. And the best ones, the ones worth telling, are about what comes after, the daily choice to love, to grow, to be partners in building something bigger than either person could create alone. This was their story. Not of a perfect love, but of a real one. Not of a relationship without challenges, but of one where both people committed to facing those challenges together. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.